Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined as usual by my fellow rumor enjoyer Tucker Hazelin. We're here today to talk about a new Jason Schreier scoop. He's once again the hot kid on the block with a new PlayStation story, and we're going to talk all about it. Before we do, if you want to talk with us about Jason Schreier, PlayStation, anything else at all, be sure to join our Discord link as usual. Top of the description really down there. Tucker, hold them up. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to stay up to date on all of Backlog Banter's great content. And we have a lot of great content coming, gaming-wise in particular, for the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of Game Awards coverage, a little bit of Favorite Games of the Year coverage, a little bit of a community awards show. I don't know.
Hey, whoa, hey.
I don't know. But Tucker, enough of that. Let's get to the fucking meat of the issue, the fucking root, the stem. And I'm going to read a little bit from what Jason Schreier reports here at Bloomberg. To get us all on the same page and frame this conversation about a new PlayStation service that seems to be a Game Pass analog. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this here. Sony Group Corp's PlayStation division is planning a new subscription service to compete with rival Microsoft Corp's popular Game Pass, according to people familiar with Sony's plans and documents reviewed by Bloomberg. The service, codenamed Spartacus, will allow PlayStation owners to pay a monthly fee for access to a catalog of modern and classic games, said the people who asked not to be identified because they weren't authorized to speak to the press about the plans.
As most rumors end up coming from.
Yes. The offering will likely be available on the smash hit PlayStation 4, which is blah, 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 and PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
Now, here is where we get real saucy. When it launches, expected in the spring, the service will merge Sony's two existing subscription plans, PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now. Currently, PlayStation Plus is required, blah, 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 blah. Documents reviewed by Bloomberg suggest that Sony plans to retain the PlayStation Plus branding, but phase out PlayStation Now. Details on Spartacus may still not be finalized, but documentation reviewed by Bloomberg outlines the service with 3 tiers. The first would include existing PlayStation Plus benefits. The second would offer a large catalog of PlayStation 4 and eventually PlayStation 5 games.
Okay.
The third tier would add extended demos, game streaming, and a library of classic PS1, PS2, PS3, and PSP games.
Interesting. That last part I had not heard.
And then Jason just kind of chews the fat a little bit and compares, the market position of PlayStation and Xbox. That's about it. Tucker, what do you think?
So this is really fascinating to me as someone who is, let me check my watch, about 6 days into owning an Xbox and even trying Xbox Game Pass as anything. I'm not entirely invested in the streaming service culture yet. However, I can certainly foresee that changing as I adapt to using Game Pass and eventually this service, because I don't think there's any way I go through next year without at least giving this a shot, learning about it, seeing what it's like, because this is a very fascinating prospect to me. PS Plus, I have, but it's really hit or miss. I don't really play a lot of the games. I don't play any games online. Frankly, I don't really know why I have it. I got it last year to play Fall Guys, but that was a long time ago. And PS Now, I also gave it a shot, but I didn't find myself using it for too long. But I do think that the idea of rolling this all together and adding more on top of that makes this pretty beefy and a reasonable competitor yet to be seen to Xbox Game Pass, which is of course the gold standard for those sort of things. That third tier is what really interests me, and I think is obviously the meat of this discussion, because the bottom two just kind of sound like you either do tier 1 is PS Plus, tier 2 is PS Now and PS Plus, and tier 3 is the actual new shenanigans. I find all this fascinating, mostly for me because I think PlayStation has the most interesting back catalog of games, first party, third party, otherwise, that are not necessarily accessible to modern console audiences. Xbox, through Game Pass, has everything you could fucking want, all the way back to the original Xbox, which is phenomenal. Nintendo, sort of halfway with the Switch, has a lot of their old catalogs accessible. With the Wii U, it's very accessible, but PlayStation has always been really hit or miss with that. PS Now doesn't have any PS1 games on it. It has I think it's 10 PS2 games on it, which is just a weird number. Why only 10? So having all of this is very exciting for me and gives me a great opportunity to try a lot of those older games that, frankly, I would have no other way to try.
Yeah, I agree on a personal level that
Mhm.
that it's that third tier that's exciting. I think what's interesting about it is the second tier is kind of PS Plus and PS Now, but ultimately
Mhm.
PS Now was PS2, PS3, PS4, of course, to varying extents, but it was
Yeah.
those three things. So kind of gutting that and making it only like a modern game service and then having a tertiary tier for classic games. I'm happy that I will personally have access to these things,
Sure. Yeah.
but I don't think that this is an especially compelling purchase,
Okay.
especially if it is going to ratchet up in cost from where PS Plus sits now, right?
Sure.
And ultimately, that is speculation, but considering Sony's kind of rhetoric about being the premium place to play and charging $70 and not always offering the PS4 and PS5 version of the game together or whatever, I foresee this being a service that moves up in cost, moves the ceiling up, but not the floor down.
Sure.
And
yeah.
because of that, I'm going to really need to know more details, because if they're saying you can stream PS3 games and you can have, little collections of PS1, PS2, then that's going to be a hard pill for me to swallow, because I think what makes the expansion pass, in my opinion, worth the money, even though the one Paper Mario game coming this month, which we're going to talk about at some point, is souring me on that service too, is that ultimately you do not have to pay very much to get to that point. But if you have to pay up to the third tier, right, of a PlayStation service, you have this classic content, well, then I think we're going to have a problem, at least for me.
It's obviously yet to be seen what the pricing framework of this is. I agree that the higher tier will probably be higher than anything that anyone is paying right now for PlayStation services, as it does seem to be the most comprehensive, and I think there is a lot of value there regardless. But what is yet to be seen is how those lower two tiers compare in terms of price, because I can see this third tier service, which is really what we're going to focus on, as the Game Pass competitor, being similar in price to Game Pass but more, and the other two I can see being less than Game Pass, sort of offering a balance to people to get in on the ground floor and pay less, or have everything and pay more.
See, I'm not sure I necessarily agree on that point, because I think what the Game Pass competitor is that second tier of the PS4 and PS5 games.
No, but if you pay for the third tier, you get all the other tiers.
No, so you get all the other tiers.
That's what I'm saying. So that makes it the comprehensive. You get the new stuff and the old stuff, which is what Xbox Game Pass is great at.
We'll see. I think the reason I'm hesitant is because a large part of the reason why I upgraded to a Series X is for that disk drive, because the backwards compatibility program in supplement to Game Pass is why I think that ecosystem is so successful, because there are some older titles in Game Pass, but Game Pass really by and large is not about older titles. It is, like Bethesda has their back catalog on there. There's back catalog stuff in there, but a lot of those backwards compatible titles are not. You're going to have to buy a disc or buy them off, the Microsoft store. And so,
that's the other thing that I forgot that I think sort of rolled into my mind as it was all available. But no, you're right. There is a lot of those that are available digitally, which is of course great for accessibility and preservation, but that doesn't add to Game Pass. No, you're right. So actually, if I reframe it a little bit, this could even be more interesting than Game Pass, depending on how much they're able to lean into the newer games. Because what Game Pass is great at right now is giving you day and date all the first party Xbox titles. No way in fuck are we gonna get the God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West day and date on fucking Spartacus. No way. But if they support enough of the PS4 library, the older PS5 games, and have a really robust catalog of those backwards compatible games, that's certainly an Xbox Game Pass competitor right there.
Yes, it is. I think on an objective level, I think completely. I think for me, subjectively, I'm not sure if that's true, because so much of the value of Game Pass comes from those first party titles. I really think that. And so it also comes from the strength of Game Pass on a AAA level is the fact that Microsoft can lose money on it. They can pay a fucking arm and a leg for Back 4 Blood and Outriders and to get this on the service. PlayStation, Sony doesn't really have that kind of capital. So I think
they're sort of a small, up and coming company.
But they are no Microsoft, and the sort of money you'd have to throw like a half or a third of a AAA exclusives budget at getting any one of these AAA games on Game Pass in the first place. And so I just find myself wondering, am I going to feel as though this legacy content is being held hostage up on this third tier? And again, it's all going to come back to price, because you can make the same argument about why NSO, the expansion pass, sucks. But I think the thing about the expansion pass is that the ceiling comes in below what I expect the floor is going to be for PlayStation service. And that's why I think this is an interesting idea, but nothing more than that, because I want to know how much it's going to cost. And is PlayStation going to have a backwards compatibility program? Can I just go on PSN and buy Metal Gear Solid 1?
Of course, yes.
Or am I going to have to be at the third tier of this subscription to do that?
Yeah, no, and of course that's yet to be seen. It's not impossible for that to happen, for you to be able to download MGS1 on the PSN store. Though I think that's a huge amount of framework reworking that frankly should have launched with the console if it was going to be. It feels a little weird to be a year and a half in and have that be a big update, which of course is, if it happens, is great that it's happening at all. However, I don't necessarily foresee that happening. I think that's a little bit too much optimism. But I certainly agree with that. That would be unfortunate, and it would frame it similarly to people's frustrations with the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass. Why are you paying the premium price for the old games if you can't get them anywhere else? Like there's questions there that I think will be put into comparison with the PS Plus, which is what it's going to be called, third tier. There's a lot of fucking terminology here that has not been set up yet. But also they have a really extensive back catalog, and if it's big enough, personally, I won't care how much it costs. I'm there too. So many of these games I've always wanted to play, but it's either find a physical disc of them, which are PS1 discs are hard to find or are expensive, whatever. PS2 games, you have to set up the PS2, all that. There is a framework here that I could foresee myself getting very invested in, being able to try all these games that I've always wanted to.
I hope so.
And with PSP as well. Yeah,
but this is the other reason I'm really skeptical about this service, because this is not a PlayStation that gives a fuck about its back catalog at all. That's the other thing, like Nintendo, even though they present it poorly, they've always cared about their back catalog of games, right? In some way or another, they've always made them accessible or worked towards making them accessible. This is a PlayStation that really does not care about that. With a Jim Ryan who said, "Why would you want to go play old Gran Turismo games when you just play the new one?" And all this fucking Sony remaking The Last of Us, I just think, again, we have heard so many times that PlayStation is working on a Game Pass competitor. And I just feel like I don't have the information to say whether or not that's going to hit, because if it's going to be, you get PS1 games, but it's going to be like Metal Gear Solid and Symphony of the Night and, Parappa the Rapper and Twisted Metal, but you're not going to get fucking Vib Ribbon or whatever, right? It's just a big question mark, because for that service to appeal to me, it's going to need to have those B, C tier games 100%. In there, and I just don't trust that they're going to be there.
No, that's definitely a big question mark. A lot of what comes out of this article is interest for me. It's intrigue. Okay, this seems more concrete than we've been hearing in the past. This seems more imminent. This seems more reputable. And if this information is here now from a source who should not have shared it legally and through reporting in a month or so, which is when I perceive we would end up learning about this, if it was going to launch 2 months after that, somewhere in that 3-month time period, there is the possibility that this does appear more substantial and forward thinking than we're expecting, because we're basing this off of the first year and a half of PS5, which for you and I has been pretty hit or miss in terms of what they're doing to put themselves up as a competitor and helping out their consumers. But this could change that vibe. this could actually be a Game Pass competitor. And if it is, in the best case scenario that we get, this is the best case scenario, handful of the new first party titles.
Yeah.
We get a really solid back catalog of PSP 1, 2, and 3. We already have the PS Plus collection, which is ostensibly every big PS4 game you could want. That would make me, frankly, that would knock my interest of Xbox Game Pass right out the window, just because I think the games that Sony makes are far more compelling. So I'm excited for this for its possibility, but it's cautious optimism, because if you look at their track record, it's not going to be on the level of Game Pass.
No.
But it's not impossible for it to be if they really do want to compete with Game Pass, because Game Pass gives Microsoft an absolutely insane amount of goodwill. And maybe Sony wants to grab some of that. Who knows?
Well, I think the challenge is, can Sony afford to grab that kind of goodwill?
Yeah, sure.
Because what is Game Pass without Microsoft Studios titles and without day one non-Microsoft Studios titles games, right?
It's PS Now.
Right. I think that's a really apt comparison.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think we're going to quickly reach a point where it's no different than movie streaming services in the sense of Amazon Prime Video, right? Or you look at Amazon Prime, you look at Netflix, you look at HBO Max, whatever you have. At a certain point, there's so much overlap. What matters is what sets the service apart.
Yeah.
And so if there's like 65% overlap between the last gen and current gen games available on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus.
Yeah.
But this one has Microsoft's $100 million+ AAA, quadruple A, fucking perfect dark big budget games on it.
Yeah.
Then I do not care about this service.
Yeah.
And so I think that what would have been smarter, in my opinion. Now, of course, it's all speculative, but if I was Sony, I would just cut right to that third tier about the legacy games. Don't even try to fight Microsoft on the Game Pass thing, because they just do not have the money to win it. And so I don't know. it just feels like, why are you going to try to do what Microsoft is already doing with more resources, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I don't know. All of this, I think, comes down to that pricing. Of course, Xbox Game Pass being a very premium content-wise, but reasonably cheap money-wise option. Frankly, I foresee this losing on both fronts in terms of they're not going to be putting God of War Ragnarok on this day and date, although it's not impossible. There's so many questions about this that I disagree that why even try, because I think they should try. I think competition is a great thing, and if each of them starts lighting fires under each other's asses to improve their services, that's only a good thing for us. And that's existing only makes me think that maybe Sony does care a little bit more. PS Now is fine for what it is, but it's a relatively forgettable service. Most people don't have it. It's not talked about very much. And so that existing was, okay, why even bother? But now I think they should bother. I think they have the possibility to make something that is appealing to a different demographic than people who want the big Xbox titles on day one, but having a Sony back catalog of dozens and dozens and dozens of games that people really love. Xbox doesn't have that kind of history to lean on. They have part of that history, but I think they supplement their service with the new games, because that's where most of their strength is shining right now. Sony has had that strength for their entire history, and giving people access to that, I think, is a lot more compelling than maybe you're letting on to comparison to the first party Xbox games. And of course, it's only on PlayStation. So when you say there's 65% overlap, that's probably not going to be true, because if they have their first party games on here, obviously none of that's going to be on Game Pass. So that's the exclusive content. That's what you sign up for a certain service for, Netflix, Hulu, whatever I'm saying. And in comparison, you're signing up for this for access to that, because it's the only place you can get it.
No, I agree with what you're saying. I think that's why you don't have this weird second tier in there. That's what I think doesn't make any sense, because that is the tier that is most likely going to be third party.
Or flip them.
Flip them if you want, sure.
You're right. But the ordering of it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's just that tier is what I take issue with, because that feels like a waste of your resources, because that is where you lose to Microsoft. But you're totally right about that third tier having these games that people really care about, having a subscription service that is different than Game Pass and differently compelling than Game Pass. That's my thing. But you're putting this differently compelling one on top of a copycat, ostensibly. Sure. And that's my problem. Because why should we have to pay through the copycat to get to
and of course
the good stuff?
The difference between the tiers will probably be no more than $5 or $10 each, but of course that adds up quite a lot. And the fact that there is that middle tier pushes the third tier up, which I think is where we come into the issue. But for me, really all that matters is that the pricing of the top tier. How comparable is it to Game Pass? Because that top tier, if me future projecting, has that really solid back catalog, and you still get the bottom tier, which is the PS4 and PS5 games, that's on par with Game Pass, hopefully, of course, speculatively. But yeah, it's really only that top tier that matters. And the ideal situation is that that top tier is more than Game Pass, but it is comparable and you can sort of, put them on par. And then that lower one is lower than Game Pass and still offers to a select demographic of people who don't care about the access to the classic games, an option to have a reasonably decently sized library of PS4 and PS5 games.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I just don't have a lot of faith in Sony's ability to make that top tier compelling in terms of the content they're offering.
Sure.
Because I think the other thing is these games appeal to us, but really PlayStation 2 was driven by third-party exclusives in large part. Things like, Grand Theft Auto, a lot of the most beloved PS1 games are second-party titles.
100%,
And so how many of those can you even get? Because
the
service appeals to me if it has Vib Ribbon. If it has Twisted Metal, it appeals to more people, but it's still not going to appeal to a whole ton. I think that probably the fact that it is at the third tier suggests to me that they think it is the least compelling tier. Because
it's the one that's least accessible.
It's the least accessible, and the demographic that PlayStation is because here's a great example. If you look at the games, the 10 most played games in the first year of PlayStation 5's lifespan, I think there was one exclusive, and it was Miles Morales.
Sure, no, that's a great point. Yeah,
the PlayStation,
it's COD and Madden and FIFA and all that shit. Yeah,
and it's a stereotype, but it's also just a general market observation that the sort of people playing those games do not care about Parappa the Rapper or whatever.
Of course, 100%.
And so I think
no one will disagree with that.
And it makes me feel then like, how much effort is Sony going to put into that, especially when they look at who their player base is and how they have been treating the hardcore player base as a result,
Yeah.
Like if servicing their back catalog was really a priority for them, they would have done it already.
Yeah.
That's the thing that concerns me. I don't know. I think it's a good idea, but this is a situation where I cannot go on no information and feel optimistic, I suppose.
Sure. No, that's definitely reasonable. My optimism totally just comes from my personal interest in all of this. If it's honestly, I can't remember how much PS Now is per year, how much
60 or PS Now. I believe
PS Now is 60 a year. How much is Game Pass a year? A Game Pass Ultimate? I mean, you pay it, but
I pay $15 a month.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously you would probably land somewhere in between those. I can't foresee that third level being, $20 a month. I don't think that's necessarily something that they could make almost any money on. I don't think people would go for that. So if it is $15 a month on that, comparable with Game Pass, this is so much speculation. I don't fucking know, but
it comes back to the thing of they're not willing to put PS Now and PS Plus together right now. You have to pay $120 for those two services.
Yes. So frankly, you could already be saving money if you're getting that top tier comparison wise.
Well, but then we have to add that third tier on top. You know what I mean? Basically for tiers 1 and tiers 2, ostensibly you're paying $120 already.
Yeah.
So then what happens when you add in that third? Right. So when you add in that third tier, it's gonna be even more. And Microsoft again is in a position as a corporation where they can eat any cost Xbox wants them to. Phil Spencer gave an interview with GQ for the 20th anniversary of the franchise or of the brand, and he was asked like, so how do you go about getting $7.5 billion for Bethesda? And he's like, well, it really wasn't that hard actually. And that is just a testament to the resources available to Xbox as a brand.
Yeah,
those resources are not available to PlayStation as a brand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, I foresee this being very expensive, and I foresee it not dipping deep enough into that catalog of exclusive games to be worth the price that I imagine it's going to cost. I think $20 a month for the top tier is what it's going to cost.
So all of that I think makes sense.
Yeah.
But frankly, seeing how Xbox has been gathering that goodwill and over the course of the beginning of this generation, it's been like PlayStation has been losing the race in terms of general consensus. Of course, they're selling very well. That's not a problem. But in terms of that goodwill and how much they care about it, I don't know. Frankly, I don't know if they could eat a $25 a month thing that doesn't care. Like, if they make this overpriced, that is going to dramatically hurt that business proposition.
I just don't think it. I don't think it does, because I think that they're selling so much more. They just don't really care. Like, there is those leaked documents with Epic about being like, you're going to pay us for crossplay, or blatantly lying and going back in what they said about Forbidden West's release and then having to walk that back again. They don't give a shit about goodwill. I really believe that, because they are selling so well. They're in a Nintendo position.
Yeah.
Nintendo puts out the expansion pass. Everyone goes, what is this? They go, and then they make a ton of money.
And then here's Paper Mario 2 months later.
What Microsoft needs the goodwill, because they do not have the sales results.
Sure, that's a great point. Right? That's a great point.
PlayStation puts it out. You put out that top tier at $25. Maybe it just drives people to the $15 a month tier. You know, like, fuck it. If that's the tier that's going to appeal only to the hardest core of PlayStation fans, they're going to pay it, and the people who aren't going to might pay $15 a month for that second tier, and it's probably more than you're going to get out of them for just PS Plus.
Yeah.
I just don't read Sony as being in a position as a corporation or as a brand where they care about goodwill.
Well, that is, I think 2022 is the year where we see if that happens or
definitely,
not. Well,
definitely.
I mean, clearly from this, if this is supposed to be launching in spring, but with the, as we have noted lots of times, I know this is pretty controversial, the relatively weak first year of the PS5 in terms of its exclusives and everything. 2022 will hopefully turn that around. I would absolutely love that. But that's their chance for me as an audience member, being relatively disconnected from the PS5 ecosystem this year, because they, as you said, haven't really seemed to care that much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just fucking, it's my KOTOR remake machine. Bought it preemptively. Tucker, do you have anything
Before
else?
It was even announced.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Not too much. Give me Vib Ribbon on PS5. That's all I'm asking for.
God, I really want to play Vib Ribbon.
So do I. Yeah. Apparently it's available on Vita somehow.
But it's not fun unless you can load your own music into it. That's the thing.
Oh. Yeah, but I don't like my own music.
No, but it's so cool because on PS1 you can put in Vib Ribbon, take out Vib Ribbon, put in a different CD, and you can play Vib Ribbon to the tune of anything. That's fucking awesome.
End the fucking recording. Why are we talking about Vib Ribbon?